Christmas is often a time of joy, togetherness, and wonder. But things don't always go as expected. Here are 4 true stories of terrifying experiences on Christmas Eve, where ghosts of the past and terrifying presences disturb the most memorable moments. Prepare yourself, because these stories will make you rethink what's hidden behind the twinkling lights and decorative gifts. Story 1: The Mysterious Door and the Terrifying Break-In. That Christmas Eve, in the midst of the cold winter, our small apartment radiated some rare warmth from a family dinner. On the table, traditional dishes are carefully arranged: aromatic stuffed turkey, slices of golden toast, soft mashed potatoes, and colorful side dishes. Outside, the wind whistled through the spindly tree branches and through the windows, creating long, haunting howls. My family is not large, only grandparents and uncles from my mother's side of the family. We live in a duplex, sharing it with a couple we have never met, despite having lived here for almost a year. This apartment has a strange thing, a mysterious door connecting the 2 sides that not every apartment has. That door is rarely used, and it is locked with a special lock. To open this door, it is necessary to turn the key from both sides at the same time, creating a feeling of insecurity, as if this apartment had been designed with a purpose far different from normal houses. That night, while we were passionately enjoying dinner, cheerful laughter echoed throughout the room, relieving the loneliness of winter. But then, amid the sound of chopsticks and bowls clashing, a strange sound rang out from the door connecting the 2 sides of the apartment. That sound, at first like a gentle creak, then suddenly turned into the sound of a lock turning slowly, hissing little by little, as if someone was trying to open the door from the other side. Silence suddenly enveloped the room. Everyone's eyes turned to that mysterious door. The doorknob slowly turned, but not quickly, but seemingly deliberately, as if the person on the other side wanted us to notice his presence. My father, his face tense and his eyes bright, stood up and walked to the door. He put his hand on the lock, and the silence became even more oppressive. No one dared to breathe loudly, as if even a small sound could awaken what was lurking on the other side of the door. When Dad unlocked it, the door made a terrifying creak, like the cry of a trapped soul. On the other side of the door, darkness was overwhelming, as thick as if no ray of light could penetrate. The apartment on the other side was like a cold mausoleum, with no signs of life. Even though it was only 6 p.m., the light from outside was still flickering, but inside the apartment, darkness seemed to have swallowed everything. We must have seen the other couple leaving the house before. My dad quietly went to check the windows, but their car had also disappeared, as if they had never existed. Everything becomes more strange and unsettling. My dad, uncle, and I decided to check out the apartment on the other side. We carried flashlights. Their weak light was not enough to dispel the creepy feeling that was covering us. We started checking the first floor. Although the apartment on the other side was small, every step made us feel like we were stepping on fragments of the forgotten past. The doors were old, the walls were covered in dust, and the furniture was old and moldy, as if it had been left behind from a distant era. Suddenly, a dry noise rang out from upstairs. The sound was like the cracking of long rotted floorboards. A cold breeze ran down my spine, and I immediately felt the presence of something not of this world. My dad and uncle decided to go upstairs, leaving me downstairs. I stood there, my whole body stiff, listening to every sound coming from upstairs. The footsteps were rushing, then suddenly a loud noise rang out, like a struggle. My heart stopped beating when a horrifying scream tore through the quiet space, my uncle's scream of pain and panic. The sound was so loud that the surrounding walls seemed to shake, and the whole space became suffocating. Right after that, my father ran down the stairs, dragging my uncle with him. Blood soaked his shirt red, each drop of blood falling to the floor, creating long, scary streaks. His face was white, pain and fear were evident in every expression. We hurriedly ran towards our apartment, locked the door, as if wanting to prevent something terrible from waiting on the other side. While we were calling 911, from the other side of the door, loud banging sounds could be heard non-stop. The door shook violently, as if a wild animal was trying to break everything and rush in. The blows were so strong that each piece of wood began to crack, and we could clearly hear the man's frantic grunts and growls. My father and the other uncle grabbed kitchen knives, prepared to deal with any situation. I also picked up a knife, feeling the cold metal in my hand, but fear almost paralyzed me. After a brief struggle, the banging on the door suddenly stopped. We heard the heavy footsteps of the person leaving, the front door slamming shut. Looking through the window, we saw him running outside, rushing through the thick snow. He turned back, his eyes dark and full of hatred shining straight at us before disappearing into the night. Those are the eyes of someone who has nothing to lose, someone who is ready to take revenge. I thought that nightmare was over, but a year later, when Christmas came again, those terrible memories revived in me. The couple still lived there, as if nothing had ever happened. One evening, on a whim, I looked through the bedroom window and saw the man who had tried to break into our apartment standing among their guests, smiling calmly as if nothing had ever happened. My heart skipped a beat. I immediately ran down to tell my dad. My dad also recognized him, and we decided to confront the couple. But when we came and asked about that man, they denied everything, and even appeared indignant. They insisted that he was just a friend from another state, and that they knew nothing about last year's incident. Even though there is no proof, deep down we all know the truth. The fear of those strange neighbors grew and surrounded us every day. We couldn't live in fear forever, and after only a month, we decided to leave that place, leaving behind the apartment with the mysterious door and horrifying memories that we never wanted to remember. Story 2. The Christmas Intruder, a Scary Memory. When I was little, on that Christmas Eve, I was just an innocent child, believing in the miracles and magic that Santa Claus brings. That night, the transition between Christmas Eve and the early morning of the holiday, when everything was quiet, I accidentally woke up. The weak light from the lamp in the bedroom was not enough to dispel the thick darkness covering the house. I got out of bed in an excited mood, curious to know what gifts Santa Claus had left under the tree. It is a joy that any child looks forward to on Christmas Eve. In the dim space of the living room, the shimmering light from the lights on the pine tree highlights the carefully arranged colorful gift packages. Large and small gift boxes stacked on top of each other, creating a beautiful, enchanting scene. I stood there, feeling happiness spread through my heart at the thought that Santa Claus had actually visited my house. But then, from the kitchen, a strange sound rang out, breaking the peaceful atmosphere. It was a rustling sound, as if someone was rummaging around, looking for something. My footsteps gently moved towards that sound, partly out of curiosity, partly out of fear. As I approached the kitchen, I saw a tall figure, quietly moving between the cabinets. The shadow was faint, but clear enough for me to realize that it was a tall man rummaging through my family's refrigerator. Without a sound, he opened the refrigerator door, pulled out a carton of milk, and casually brought it to his mouth to drink, as if this were his house, not mine. In that moment, time seemed to stop. I stood frozen, eyes wide open, staring at him. He also saw me. His gaze was not the gaze of a stranger who accidentally met each other in the dark of night, but the gaze of someone who clearly knew his purpose, but still wanted to play a game of cat and mouse. He put the milk carton back in the refrigerator. His dark eyes, as deep as black holes, looked at me without blinking. The silence was suffocating, and a cold feeling came from nowhere, covering the small space of the kitchen. He passed me slowly, without panic, as if my presence had no effect on his plans. As he passed by, he gently placed a cold hand on my head. The gesture seemed gentle, but it exuded horror. The coldness from his hand seemed to go straight into my soul, leaving a deep mark in my memory. He walked out to the living room, towards the Christmas tree, where the gifts were neatly displayed. No words were spoken, only quiet but decisive actions. He began to pick up each large gift box, quietly but calculatedly, as if each gift was a piece of a puzzle that had been planned in advance. I stood there, confused. Everything around me seemed to blur, leaving only his image, like a haunting ghost, gradually taking away my little joy. I tried to understand what was going on, but a child's immature mind couldn't explain his actions. Each gift box was taken away by him, as if he was robbing the most precious things of Christmas Eve. He didn't stop until almost all the large gifts had disappeared from the living room. With each turn, he just looked at me for a moment, his eyes containing something indescribable, not a threat, but a powerful dominance, as if he were playing a game. But only he knows the law. And then he quietly walked out the back door, leaving me in an empty room, lacking not only the gifts but also the warmth and safety of home. Time passed, but I still stood there, waiting for him to come back, but all there was terrifying silence. Finally, I couldn't keep silent anymore. I ran upstairs, waking my parents in a panic. They jumped up, unable to believe what I said, but when they got downstairs, the sight of the empty room with the back door wide open sent them into a state of genuine shock. My mother screamed in extreme fear. The sound seemed to rip through the quiet space of Christmas Eve. My father almost shouted at me, asking me to describe the man who entered our house, but all I could say was he was very tall. After nearly 15 years, the memory of that Christmas night still haunts me. To a 5-year-old child at the time, it all seemed like a bad dream. But now, looking back, I realized that it was not just a story to tell, but a haunting memory. His face, the coldness of his hands, and his dark eyes are still imprinted in my mind, never to fade away. Now, every time I think about Christmas, I no longer feel warmth and happiness, but instead feel fear and obsession about the person who entered our house that night, carrying a shadow. The darkness and terror of a stolen Christmas Eve. Story 3: Scary Santa, the Terror of Christmas Eve. The memories of my childhood years are not simply sweet and fun ones. Part of it also contained fear, insecurity, and a deeply haunting experience that I will never forget. Especially during the Christmas season, when miracles are often mentioned, a creepy memory is etched in my mind. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, the Christmas season arrived with all its beauty and warmth. The mall where my mother used to take me for a walk was lavishly decorated with flashing lights and carnival bands playing cheerful tunes like Jingle Bells. A giant pine tree occupies the entire central space, glowing under the lights. In that bustling scene, Santa Claus sat on a large chair covered with a green blanket, attracting the attention of every child and parent. Children stand in line, waiting for their turn to sit on Santa's lap, a familiar and common sight on this holiday. My mother, with love and warmth, decided that I should also wait for the opportunity to meet Santa Claus. I, although feeling embarrassed and scared, could not refuse my mother's request. Mom knew that I was very shy and always nervous when facing strangers, but she was still determined to bring me close to Santa Claus. When I finally sat on Santa's lap, my anxiety increased. Santa hugged me gently, but that hug did not bring the feeling of security that I expected. His breathing was heavy and warm, but it made me feel uncomfortable. He whispered in my ear, asking what I wanted for Christmas, and I replied that I wanted a Game Boy Advance. Santa Claus promised that I would receive that gift, but at that time I could not imagine that his promises contained something scary. When my mother approached Santa and talked to him, I saw him giggling, responding to my mother with an incomprehensible smile. Santa then told me to wait there for a while my mother returned. His attention was now completely focused on me, and my anxiety increased. When my mother left, Santa pulled me closer, my back against his chest. That feeling, combined with his heavy breathing, made me feel not only uncomfortable, but as if I were stuck in the middle of nightmares. He whispered in my ear again, saying that he had a Game Boy Advance outside in his sled, and if I followed him, I would receive the gift immediately, without having to wait until Christmas. At first, my fear was replaced by excitement, and I trusted his words. I got out of my chair and followed him through an emergency exit, not in any doubt as to his motives. However, when we were halfway there, he stopped and said we needed to go to the bathroom before continuing. He quickly locked the door, and in that moment my fear surged again. I turned back to look at him. His eyes were no longer friendly, but the eyes of a man full of conspiracy and evil. Suddenly there was a frantic banging on the door, and screaming from outside made me panic. Santa opened the door, and a man from outside pulled him out and pushed him away. That man then turned to me, asked me about my mother, and escorted me back to the mall. When my mother turned around, I saw Santa Claus walking out the emergency exit, disappearing from my sight. My mother and the man quickly explained everything. I felt like I had just escaped a dangerous situation, and when my mother asked around, they discovered that there was no official Santa Claus hired that day at the mall. The fact that the man I met was not an official Santa Claus, but a pervert who masqueraded as Santa Claus to lure and kidnap children, made me feel like I had just escaped a nightmare. The fear of Santa Claus was fueled from there, and the shadow of that fear never completely left me. Christmas is no longer a happy festive season, but a time that reminds us of the menace that lurks behind the masks of imposters. As we end our journey through these scary stories, remember that not all miracles bring happiness. Behind the smiles and Christmas lights, there can be dark secrets that we never expected. Hopefully, these stories have given you a different perspective on the holiday season and reminded us that safety and peace are not always guaranteed. Be careful and keep your beautiful memories this Christmas season.